Hey guys, I am Black Ops Amazing. Welcome back to another Zombies video where today we are back with a Q&A, the series where I take your questions from the comment section below to do with the zombie storyline, Easter eggs, and I answer them as always. If you enjoyed today's video, just before we get into it, if you could drop a like rating anytime you feel like it, that's always appreciated. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content, but let's get into it. Here we go, and enjoy. So the first question of today is from the real Monty2, and you say, why do the perks taste so nasty like all of the characters say? Well, I believe there's a pretty simple answer to this. We know the perks are medicinal beverages. They weren't made for our drinking pleasure. They weren't made for tasting nice, I guess. That wasn't the main priority. These are essentially medicines, and well, with real life medicines, they don't taste too good. Their main purpose is to get you better, not to taste nice. I suppose you could also say you're not supposed to drink them, and that also goes for the perks. These are also medicine. The perks were made by organisations such as Group 935, the Ascension Group, Division 9 and other people, and so since they were made to give you abilities, well, I suppose you could say the scientists weren't prioritising taste. The next question from Demonic Vortex says, hey BOA, we all know that Richtofen made the Wunderwaffe DG2, but who made the Wunderwaffe DG the one from Tag der Toten in BO4? I can never pronounce it. Well, that's a question that I don't really know the answer to, but as you say, since we know Richtofen made the original, we could assume that possibly he had something to do with this version that we see in Tag der Toten. We know Richtofen worked here in Siberia an awful lot, but then again, it really could have been anyone that just made a few little tweaks to it. I mean, really, it's just a sniper scope that's been added on. Although this new version does have a higher ammo capacity, a mag-fed reload, and a slightly lower range. Personally, I still prefer the original, but in terms of how it works, like I said, besides from the scope, it's really not different, so could we still say it was made by Richtofen, just someone's put a scope on it? Because that's all it really seems to be. If you don't know, the name of this wonder weapon actually translates to sniper or marksman, and the Pack-a-Punch version, which I'm not going to attempt to pronounce, translates to spark shooter. But yeah, as for who made it, well, the only difference really is a sniper scope, so it could have been anyone that's just added that. But the original DG2 was made by Richtofen. The third question of the day from Swag KTV says, hey BOA, why were there radio records around the Giant? Now, I know what you mean. There are plenty of radios in the Giant as there is in any other map, but I believe you're asking why are there recordings from our characters to themselves. It seems kind of strange, but I'm going to play these radios for you. They are from Nikolai, Takio and Dempsey. We don't have one from Richtofen, and they're from other versions of themselves. They've recorded themselves a message before the Giant, so that when their other selves arrive at the Giant, if plan A was to go wrong, which it did, then they would have to go to plan B, and this is what these radios were for.
It is not all bad news, Nikolai. We may have failed in our mission, but at least there is now one less Richtofen to deal with. If it is any consolation, tell him that the first one is the hardest. I should know. I've killed at least 3 Richtofens. There was the one in the fire, the one with the bolt hook, and the one... What? No one told me? Sorry. Forget what I just said. Everything will be fine.
Hey, other me. If you're hearing this, then it means that something's gone foobar. We're going to plan B. Stick to that crab bastard like glue. We need to find out what the hell he has been doing and what he's going to do. We may be able to get a fix on your location if you can trigger one of the paradox visualizations. Good luck. We're all counting on you. Oh, wait. Whatever you do, don't get too close to the radioactive beacon. It makes your hair fall out.
Takio. Brave, uphold all the dying samurai spirit. It feels almost as though I am speaking to my ancestors. Instead, I speak to a reflection of myself. The man in the mirror, in another place, another time. Our allies are filled with confidence and bravado. But I am troubled. My dreams are haunted by a man in shadow. I fear this vision may be a portent of our destruction.
So we can tell by the way our crew start off these radios. Nikolai starts off by saying, it's not all bad news, Nikolai. We may have failed our mission, but at least there's one less Richtofen to deal with. Dempsey starts by saying, hey other me, if you're hearing this, then that means something's gone foobar. We're going to plan B. And then Takio starts by saying something pretty different. He says, Takio, brave upholder of the dying samurai spirit. It feels almost as though I'm speaking to my ancestors. Instead, I speak to a reflection of myself. So, as I said earlier, before travelling to the giant, our characters recorded messages for themselves so that when they arrived there, if plan A was to go wrong, and by the way, if you don't know what plan A was, that was for them to awaken the test subjects as we saw in the beginning of the giant trailer. However, that went wrong. Primus Richtofen came out of the teleporter, shot himself, and that caused our characters then to go to plan B, which explains why Nikolai says we may have failed our mission, but at least there's one less Richtofen to deal with, because these radios were recorded specifically for them to only listen to if plan A failed. So that's pretty much what these radios were for. Liam Atkinson says, why is Samantha's house in the BO3 multiplayer map? Well, it's interesting that you call it Samantha's house because we now know it's Dr. Monty's, but you are right, when this was first discovered in BO3, this was one of the base maps for the game, so it was one of the first Easter eggs that we found. To go along with this, at the same time we also discovered a scrap paper in the giant, where we could also see this house. But it's on the multiplayer map Infection. The description that goes along with this map says, a warped simulation of a World War II historical battle set in a quaint French village. So that's the description, and if you look at the map itself, it's definitely warped. Half of it is upside down. As we're told, it is set during World War II. But what's interesting is there are quite a few zombies Easter eggs on here, and this isn't new. We've seen zombies Easter eggs on multiplayer maps before, but this Easter egg is on quite a large scale compared to other ones, because as you can see, just outside of the playable area, there is a house. And we know this is Samantha's house, or, well, actually we know it's Dr. Monty's, but at the time we thought it was Samantha's because in the giant, or it may have even been Shadows of Evil that we could find this, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was this scrap piece of paper and we can see the exact same house. There is writing here and it says, the children will be safe in the house. Now before this we'd only ever seen the house once, and that was in Origins in the ending cutscene, although we'd never actually seen the outside. Back then we didn't know of Dr. Monty, so we didn't know who it belonged to. We only heard Maxis's voice and saw the two children, Samantha and Eddie, playing in the bedroom, but we didn't know about Dr. Monty back then. However, now we do, and a few maps later, Revelations released, where we actually got to see the house fully for the first time, and well, you can see it's actually quite different to what we saw at the beginning. In my opinion, Dr. Monty's house doesn't really look like the one we saw in the scrap piece of paper, and it doesn't look like the one we saw in the multiplayer map. Why is that? Maybe Treyarch just decided to change the design at the last second, because we definitely know this house was to do with zombies. It could have only been Monty's, so why it looks different to the one we see in Revelations, I'm not 100% sure. This could just be a different view of it. I mean, it does have the same style windows and the wood on the outside. But getting back to your main question, why was Samantha or Monty's house in the BO3 multiplayer map? Well, it's nothing to do with the story. It was just an Easter egg. Now and again, Treyarch like to add references from zombies in multiplayer maps, so that's pretty much what we're seeing here. Plus, pretty much everything in the map Infection is warped. Things are in places they shouldn't be, which I suppose you could say is a reason why we see a zombies object in multiplayer. We have different dimensions colliding, but in terms of storyline, it doesn't mean anything. It's just an Easter egg in a multiplayer map like many others. And talking about others, in this map we can also find a sign that says Waffenfabrik de Ries. I probably pronounced that incorrectly, but that translates to Weapons Factory, the Giant. Of course, that's a link to the Zombies map, de Ries. In one of the houses, you can also find pictures of boxers hanging on the wall. These are the same ones that you can find in Shadows of Evil. Along with that, there's boxing gloves as well, and the fumigator. So that's just a few examples. And the final question from Star Platinum says, BOA, why does nobody starve or get thirsty? Well, actually, that's a good question. As I've said before, we don't see our characters eating in game, and that pretty much goes for every game. We don't really see our characters eating food. However, in BO3, in the Frozen Forest for the main menu, our characters do eat things like beans and stuff from cans, so they do actually eat. In terms of drinks, I suppose you could say the perks, but yeah, it's not something we really see. We just have to assume it happens. I mean, if we're talking about Samuel, we know he eats zombies. He's kind of a weird guy. I'm just going to leave that there. So there we go, guys. Thank you so much for watching today's video. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed. If you have, you know what to do. Drop a like rating, it really helps me out. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest zombies content on the channel. Could we shoot for 2,115 likes on this video. I don't know if you guys could do it. If you could, you're amazing. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye.